Hello there, and welcome to, I've even lost track of the number, episode 20-something. Jeez.
20-something. You're the one that keeps track of this. That's your job.
23. Episode 23, in which we will be discussing, drum roll please, these guys are going to find out live on the episode, art.
Oh, god damn it. That's a massive topic.
As a bit of a Jonny, it was either going to be that or physics. Oh, nice and broad for this week, so yeah.
In today's episode of GCSE topics, gonna be
or PSHE, we're gonna do. I think that was a little bit of the history of it, what you guys actual experience of it, and whether or not you think it's a viable kind of area of life, or is it just something for rich people to spend their money on?
If you're Rishi Sunak, then it's a case of I know you have a job in the arts, but have you thought about just getting another job while we go through a lockdown? Real nice.
Yeah, I do want, obviously, in the arts, I think we can definitely go into some. Obviously, I'm being a bit tongue-in-cheek about art being something just for rich people to spend their money on. Obviously, it's far deeper than that. And then the history of it as well, obviously, it's got quite an interesting history.
And
as
a
it
definition,
goes,
of course.
And obviously, we need a definition or two. There's probably a few for that. So, Jonny, you can eat your heart out with the definitions of the songs. So, over to Jonny for the original, for his first thought definition of art.
It's art. I mean, is it self-expression? And then I want to say, because dancing can be art, painting can be art, sculptures. So I feel it's a form of self-expression, usually based within emotion or the physical world. So, either you're seeing something and recreating it, or you're creating something from your own self, usually based on something. And if you're an art student, more than likely you have to just do loads of fancy wordplay to make it sound like whatever you painted has a reason of why you painted it, which is always ad hoc.
Sure.
I've got to say that you got to go deeper than that. It's just got to be expression, right? I appreciate the self-expression, but if you're an actor in Macbeth, you're not doing your own art. I mean, I guess you are doing your own version of the character that you're playing, but you're playing the character written by someone else, so you're expressing something, right? It's just expression,
a feeling or a place, or it's not actually. It's not just
it's
you.
Not,
I agree.
It's not self-expression. It's just it's expression. Is insanely human.
So
It's
levels
the most human thing you can ever do. Is this that means this, and other people are like, I get it.
Or I don't get it, but it looks nice. Or looks absolutely atrocious. Why am I here?
Yeah.
That level of it, I think it's fascinating.
Tied together.
I talked to a friend of mine who did a proper a whole course at one of those very arty art schools in London. And
An arty art school, my favourite.
With a heavy drama focus, I think. And one of their sort of little tasks for the day was be melting gold in a snowstorm. That was the journey. It wasn't learn these lines and do it. But it was be melting gold in a snowstorm. And I was like, that's heavy, and that's the kind of, that's what people think when they think, oh, that's sort of a bit over the top kind of.
But right, okay. Can I just jump in here? Is that as much as I like to laugh at that's such a stupid thing to do. I enjoy the limits, right? I would enjoy being like, I'm going to try and figure out how to make something yellowy and not make it look like wee in the snow, but actually make it do something funny about it,
your body,
or twist it. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. I had a project recently. I had a project recently that was for an electronic engineering course, and it just said, do whatever you want. It just has to be engineering. And I hated it because I said, where's the limit? I don't know. It's just is making a new tap the limit, or can I invent a new metal that fixes this lamp? And I asked the tutor, and she was like, no, it needs to be realistic. And I was like, but I don't understand what I have to do. And she's like, just do something.
Sounds to me like some lazy teaching,
exactly. And I was so frustrated. Nah, of course. But I was just so frustrated with the crap limits that they provided that I would actually have been happy with. You got to provide an electronic engineering solution to a project of yellow in snow. I would have just enjoyed that creativity limit. So as much as we like to crap on this kind of crazy stuff. I'm up for kind of being interesting and trying to find new ways of
Yeah, for sure.
doing this, and it's self-expression. Like, fair enough. Screw electronic engineering. Why am I doing this course?
What one thing I do, just thinking of like the self-expression, whatever. The one thing for him, my sister, my brother, he did performing arts, and saying like the reason why he says he didn't get a first in his degree, and then why he literally did a master's and got like a distinction is because he didn't get a first in his degree. He cried when he got an RE and not an A star in A levels.
Perfectionist.
But the reason that he says it is because he didn't. He said like, what emotions did this evoke in the performance? And he was just like, I did it because of this. Do you know, like he didn't fancy up the artsy stuff, and he says he got a worse mark. And hearing of like different art students are being like, I remember doing art, well, only in GCSE, but still thinking of like, what was the reason you got to this point? And I feel you go into some like the London Art Museum, and some of the stuff I like the most is the really complex big scenes. Do you notice maybe it's like a sprawling market, and you got all those intricate details I really like. And part of it is just somebody documenting what they're looking at, and like they didn't have a phone back then or whatever. And that the intricacy I really like, but I feel nowadays it would be like, yeah, but why did you paint it? Well, I like art, and I think I'm good enough to be able to do this really impressive piece of artwork. Yeah, but we need something more than that. What's the scene portraying? But maybe there's more to go into it, but part of it is like, I feel sometimes it's you thinking too much for the reason rather than what's right in front of you, which I guess it's that in between art, isn't it? Of why are you doing it? What does it show? What are you showing in the art? And what does the art actually look like subjectively, I guess?
Well, tying all together this as well is that the like fashion of art goes through stages, right? So
totally.
If what you do is perfectly in fashion, people are like, oh yeah, that's very good, we really enjoyed that, that's very nice. But then if what you do is kind of outside of the box, and then people at first are like, oh god, we hate it, but then people are like, ooh, but he's invoking expression that you haven't thought about, and you're like, and then others are like, ooh, he's so on edge, god, he's so valiant, the things he's doing are pushing the boundaries. And then suddenly it becomes cool, or even later, like you've already died, and people are like, God, the stuff that Jonathan did was so fantastic and over the edge.
We just never knew.
Like, I mean, it happens
ahead
in music.
Of his time.
Yeah, it happens in music all the time. I mean, I remember reading the autobiography, or was it biography, I can't remember, of Keith Moon from The Who, the drummer of The Who, and he was one of those kind of
great,
full-on lunatic.
Have amazing stories coming out. Like,
interesting.
Did you read the bit about his interview to get into The Who? It was like, he sat down at his drum set and then he got this rope and tied all the drums together, and they were like, what? And what are you doing? And he's like, I've never seen him do it. He's like, yeah, I get a bit excited when I play the drums, so they tend to fly everywhere. So he had to literally tie them all together before he did his, like, Yeah,
I also enjoyed the fact that you said lunatic, and
with
his
Moon the
name's
Loon,
Keith
I think was
Moon.
his nickname,
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed that. But yes, the concept of like, before him, I'm not saying that he was the first, but like he was one of the first, of the concept of the drums are their own instrument. He's not just a backing thing. He's someone who adds to it. Like the whole idea is that he's part of it. He's an instrument in himself. But the idea that like this is something that you hadn't thought of before, and so now you're like, wow, this is incredible. Like this is a change of art. Is it just that this is a new expression, or is it like, I mean, people have been doing this for years?
Naturally.
Like, is it progressive, but people later come back to it? Like tying it all together, I don't know. It makes art questionable for me, really.
Yeah, I see what you mean, because it's just, I also think, like, I remember hearing about like the nakedness thing. There's a certain point of art where nakedness was shocking, like, oh my gosh, the naked and stuff like that. Now it's very like, no, everyone's done the whole naked. It's not shocking anymore to be naked or to have like genitalia on show. It's just, if anything, I mean, like for me personally, I just feel that's like just a bit lazy.
The Romans
like
a bit of that, and that's
oh yeah, and it's just like, well, yeah,
someone's
naked, and there's nothing. It's not conveying the same emotion as it used to because the culture's changed. So yeah, like having that is like, if you know what I mean. Yeah, so the thing you're saying with fashions, everything changes, and I guess some stuff was shocking is now just commonplace, and I guess you're right, it'll just loop around anyway. A cool thing I heard is also with the illegal trade in art, in the sense of that you can use it for like tokens. I think I've already mentioned this previously.
Non-fungible tokens.
Non-refundable tokens.
Non-fungible.
Fungible.
Fungible.
Non-refundable. It's also that. Non-fungible basically means like if you can copy it or not. So yeah, it's basically saying you can't copy it. So
I can't believe that the internet made non. Oh, we're gonna come back to this. I googled it recently. I didn't realize what fungible things were, but okay, we'll come back to it.
But yeah, the thought of like, because art is subjective for its value, of like you can literally just name a price and then sell it to somebody, and then it's just a great way to
money laundering.
Yeah, because it's like, well, can we put a number on it? Well, yes, but we're just pulling it out because this is what it's intrinsic. It's the same with shares, though, isn't it? You know, like, why is it so valuable? It's got some relative meaning behind it, but if you look at GameStop, I mean, that is, well, their shares are just for the sake of somebody decided they were valuable, and just because, yeah.
Yeah, it's slightly different with terms of like the group mentality and how easy it would be to say. But then I suppose a group of artists would have to come together to say this is what it's worth to me. But like the other thing with art, obviously, it could be it's more subjective for that one person who could say this means something to me because of X, Y, Z. You can't say this stock can mean something to me personally, and it's therefore worth that much money. People like, no, mate, that's not how the stock market works.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a lot of and so yeah, so into the history of art. What do you go? What springs to mind first when you hear that? And like I've heard it references sort of just the history of art, the history of old white men, which
no, but like we got two parts of the history of art, right? We've got
history. I've got the art.
We've got to address. Nah, shut up. We've got to address this. First of all, you find something and you're like, this is art. And you're like, oh, look, this is, and you've got to try and take it totally at its face. Oh, this is some sort of painting, and it looks like it's a humanoid figure. Like there's some lump at the top, and there's line coming down, and the line splits. That we would like, it looks like legs, and you got some other lines further up, and it looks like arms. So it's a picture. Oh, bam! You've jumped into the second point, where it's like it's the interpretation, right? So the first point is, right, this is some lines that someone has drawn with a paintbrush or some sort of stick, and it looks sick. Like they've used some sort of acrylic things that they've ripped off a donkey. I don't know how acrylics are made, I'm so sorry. And then the second part is the fact that we have to interpret it, right? So you've got the ball on the stick and the other sticks, and your brain automatically goes, right, that's got to be a stick man, and he's clearly angry or happy or sad or fighting or whatever, and like your brain can't help but try to interpret what it's seeing, right? And so that's the second part. You got the first part, which is just seeing that someone's made the art, and the second part that's saying it's this, that, or the other. And it's really hard as humans with emotions to decipher between the two, like. But we have to recognise that those are both separate points. That's what I find interesting about art and the history of it.
I like that.
I mean, the biggest thing saying for because sorry, you know about so not fully about history, but I guess do you know like we usually like the whole urinal thing upside down, whatever. It's like you look at it, it's like that's not art really.
Can we give some facts here? This is Duchamp's fountain, where he put a urinal on its side and called it art. And then later on, the urinal was destroyed accidentally by a caretaker or a janitor or something. And then they had to spend a sugar ton of money making that urinal again in order to replicate this like €25,000 piece of art.
But like, I guess the reason how you usually think that's stupid, why does it mean anything? But I guess because you're saying like art, fashion changes of like, well, we've seen all this art. You know, we've seen it all before. We're kind of like, it is art, but we're kind of not really fussed about it anymore. And then suddenly someone comes out with some, like, look, this is art. And you're like, no, that's not art. What are you talking about? And then suddenly it's like, then you'll say why it's art. Or somebody, like, it tweaks in the head. Actually, oh, is this why it's art? I get it now. That's so, like, provocative and so, like, evoking of what seems like nothing. But I guess it's because when you're, like, tired of art almost, and, like, the new thing comes, and it's like suddenly it awakens that kind of initial thing of, like, I get it. This is why it's art. This is why it's incredible. Or what seems like really ordinary or like a little bit odd. And I get that's how you get to that point. But I think my thought is it must be from like fatigue of seeing the same kind of art over and over that you want to see something new, and somebody has something which is like doesn't seem like art, and suddenly you realise the explanation behind it is why it is. Or
Picasso's self-portraits as it like throughout his life, it's quite amazing because at the beginning he drew exactly what it was, and he was a fantastic artist, and his whole life. Obviously, he was a fantastic artist, but he's very, very, literal in terms of the early days. And it obviously was
Literal.
more and more abstract.
Realist.
Realist is the word. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, really. So abstract, like to a crazy degree. But yeah, that's kind of the point you're making there, right? So yeah, I think that.
And
it's what it is.
It's just for history.
do you ever-
The thing is, yeah.
Did you ever think like, okay, so we're talking about right now art with like paintings and stuff, but what about music? Like, when someone plays you a piece of music and it's maybe kind of very emotional in the sense of it's just trying to convey something. I mean, it could be classical, it could be whatever, it could be metal. It's like it's trying to convey anger. There's that side, but then there's just playing music for the sake of it because you enjoy it. Like there's painting for the sake of it. Like, what about art that's not trying to convey something, that's just for enjoyment?
Yeah, cause I think that's definitely a good point. Because obviously, it's who are you making it for? What are you making it for? What's the purpose of it? So yeah, I see that. I'll put that question to you guys. So, Freddie, you can't answer that with your point. Johnny, what do you think is the purpose of art? Like, what is its purpose?
Yeah, well, I guess the thing
Who's it for?
the one
Is it for the artist, or is it for
was the question. What's it for?
purpose of art? What's your take on that?
Actually, the purpose. I guess it's like initially, I feel it'd be for documenting stuff. If you think about the first art, is somebody drawing a human or a giraffe or anything like that, or the drawing, or which is a really common thing in a lot of things, is just genitals. I mean, that's a thing that we've done for centuries, and nothing's really changed. But I think initially, surely it's just documenting things that you see, and then it becomes more like you're trying to show what you're seeing, and then maybe you're trying to show what you're feeling, and then it goes from that. Where you're just trying to document things in a physical, or as it comes to music, like an auditory way. Yeah.
Okay, I've got the biggest question that I did research a long time ago and I can't remember it, and that is the value of art. Okay, you're just gonna have to just pay attention for a second here. Is the value of a piece of art that you're given, is it the skill of making it, i.e. how difficult it was to make it? Like a really good painter makes it because and you're like, wow, they managed to paint it so perfect to life, or the guitarist managed to do something that no one else can do. Or is it how well it conveys that thing? Like, wow, that painting, even though it hasn't perfectly encapsulated what it looks like to be a piece of tinfoil, it encapsulates the idea of that scene.
Good or bad, kind of.
Yeah. Or is it just how much people think it's good? Like 10 people out of 20 think it's great, but 5 of them think it's crap, and other 5 of them think it's all right. Like, where's the value come from? What makes the piece of art worth something? Why do people like it?
I think the name of the artist is basically. I think that's
that was that.
Yeah.
That
I hadn't actually got to.
So,
I had one more point and I'd totally forgotten about that, and that was the history. Crap, I totally forgot about the history, because the history is a very interesting thing that's very uniquely human.
We have a second half. Don't worry.
I know, but I just got to track that in. The history, like if I say to you, here's a pen, and this pen has been used by Hitler. Oh, and this pen has not been used by Hitler, but they're identical pens. And you're like, whoa, oh my God, that pen's been used by Hitler. You're like, yes. And they're like, oh, I don't want to touch it. And this pen has not been used by him. But they're identical. It's like, yes, he didn't use this one. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I think I mixed them up. One of them is intrinsic value to it. And it does. Go to a museum. There's things in the museum that are like, this has been touched by so-and-so. That is nothing to do really with it, but it's all to do with the art.
It's the story.
Hence why incredible recreations of certain pieces of art have strange stories that I'm sure we're going to go into in the second half.
One thing, because you're saying about a lot of the value, but one thing I'm very amateur photographer. I won't really say I am. I like taking photos sometimes. I do have a camera. I went to a photography convention with one of my friends, and I would say, is the 2 types of photography which I know of is technical photography and artistic photography. So with my friend, we went to the convention. His kind of photography is very technical, so you're making sure you got all the right settings on your camera, like your aperture, your shutter speed, your ISO, everything like that, and you're making sure that everything is technically flawless, and the picture you get is crystal clear. It's great. It's exactly what you convey. You want to make it look pretty, and you do that through the technicality of it. And then when I was looking at BQ, it was somebody who worked there, and she was an ex-photography teacher from college, and she said, talking to one person about photography, you'd feel you need the best equipment out there. You need to get all the right settings. You need all the right equipment, and that's how you take a good photo. Where she'll be like, it does not matter what you have. You do not need to spend any money on getting a proper camera. You can use your phone. You can use a cheap film thing. You can do whatever. What it's about, I do think sometimes maybe like really bad digital ones, which are like really old, probably pixels make a difference. But like your phone or a disposable camera or whatever, it's about taking photos wherever you are and trying to capture the scene that you see and want to show it to somebody else. And that's the case of it doesn't matter what the settings are or how good your camera is. It's about conveying that artistic photography, and it's definitely
memory as well, right?
That's it. And like you say, like this street scene, someone take a photo of the exact same thing and it looked completely different. Maybe it's a different angle, maybe it's whatever, because somebody sees it in this artistic value, and which you don't get necessarily with all the technicals. Well, obviously the two merge together, but someone can take a technically flawless photo, but it doesn't have that it factor that you just feel. So I think there's two nice sides, which obviously they merge together, but like, yeah.
Can I add in a tiny bit? Do you guys know what lo-fi music actually means? Just because I learnt about it the other day.
Low fidelity.
What does that mean? Well, this is the thing, right? If you ever Google lo-fi music, you're going to get probably a lot of chill blah 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 that's like meant to be played in the background. But what it actually means is that you hear the crackles of the record. You hear the fact that it's not quite in tune. You hear the fact that something's not quite right. Low fidelity, it just means like it's to modern day standards, badly edited, badly produced, unpolished, exactly. And so, I never thought about this, but if you get a good lo-fi, it's like it's got that, as the needle gets put down onto the record, and weirdly, even though to all intents and purposes that should make it crapper, it makes it more authentic. You enjoy it. You're like, you feel it, and you're like, yeah. I'm there. I'm part of this. This is a real thing that's being played on a real instrument. It's not just being edited perfectly through an auto-tune, and it makes it good. And you're like, why does, like you were saying, like, why do we enjoy that? Like,
that's the enjoyment that people get out of it, and what you get out of it as I think that is a seriously important part of all this. So yeah, we're going to call it there for the first half. Thank you very much for listening, and I want to put some questions to these guys. The biggest question I want to put to you for next week is, I want you to go and find what is, in your opinion, the best art.
Oh, come on, that's impossible.
No, not the best, but not the epitome, but just I want you to find something that you really think is like Jonny mentioned earlier, like a really detailed scene, like a sort of like a street thing. But I just want you to find it. We'll have a look. It doesn't have to be like a painting. It could be anything really, but a painting, and then if you want to do something else, do something else. But definitely get a painting, and then have it to be.
So you have to have one painting that's good.
Basically, that you think is just like phenomenal. I'd be very curious to see how different they are. All three of us will do this, so we'll find a painting that we just think is, for whatever reason, fantastic, and and obviously it can. I think the other thing we didn't really mention is also sentimental value, right? Of art. That's another big part of it. But so we'll talk about that next week. So the history, sentimental things, and so yes, thank you very much, and we will see you in a few moments. Welcome back to part 2 of art. I'm here with Jonathan.
Hello.
And Freddie.
Hi, I love that's part 2 of art.
Part 2 of art. With no specificity needed. We are going straight in with art. So, as you may recall from probably about a minute ago, we asked these guys, the main question for this week was, I wanted them to find the best art. Nice and easy. But obviously in their own, completely as subjective as you like, specifically a painting, but also any other kind of art that they particularly just thought was, that's pretty good for whatever reason. So yeah, let's go to Freddie first. What did you find?
Crap.
Google away.
Okay. Well, what I focused on was first of all, from like my favorite art, specifically with. He said paintings, and I mean I'm actually more of somebody who likes sketches and stuff when it comes to visual, arted, made things. I don't know what category you put painting, sketches, and stuff into.
I believe it
'Cause,
comes
I mean,
under art.
There's visual art, which is like sculptures and stuff, and then you've got like, I mean, here's the wild stuff. Like when you write a poem, that's art written down that you could be like, that's just a really weird way of having a drawing, right? It's just lines. Anyway, whatever. So I went for Efrain Malo, who's a Mexican artist that I really like, and I just love his sketches. I know it's not a painting, but I just love that. When it comes to art, like you'd see in like a museum kind of thing.
Can you paint a picture of one of his pictures with your words? Is that
Is that art?
using a really thin pen, and that's it, and yet making incredibly detailed, vivid sketches of like faces and kind of something that looks like it's throwing a punch out to you almost, but it's still 2D and it's just done with one pen, which is just wild. So I really like that guy. Follow his Instagram at Mallow Art, in case you want to. My favourite artist.
MALLOW or MALL?
MALO.
MALO, cool.
Yeah. And then my favourite artist that really stood out to me was when I was at Australian Museum of Contemporary Art, and this guy called Anish Kapoor makes some wild structures out of like red wax, and they're just awesome. I mean, like imagine like the size of a train out of wax, but it's also like a weird smear across the wall, that kind of stuff. But that's not a painting, so it wasn't allowed in your question. Obviously.
I'm just imagining like a Baby Bell wax though. So he's
no,
loads
it
of
is.
really...
It looks like that.
Is it red? Please say it's red.
It's that red. It's that same kind of red.
I'm
Look him
really
up.
happy that's it.
Anish Kapoor. That's Nanish Kapoor Kapor. And then the other stuff I researched, we're going to come into afterwards, I'm guessing, is what is not art. Because I got too annoyed at trying to find what was art. So I was like, you know what isn't art? And then I also looked up art controversies.
Nice.
Things that were controversial.
Sounds good. Well, in terms of what is art, that might be a good time to go across to Jonny for Dictionary Corner for Jonny's definitions. We're looking forward to
go. It's the best time of the week. So art. I've got two. The expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. I like the last bit of emotional power. The second part was the various branches of creative activity such as painting, music, literature, and dance. But yeah, I like the thing of being like the last bit of appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. It's kind of thing like doesn't have to be something pretty. It can just be to evoke emotion. Really, that's quite cool. Yeah,
that's the only thing that matters with art. Really, is what emotions it elicits within you when you look at it. That's it. Really, that's yeah.
I'm not going to say about the best piece of art, but what personally I find is probably one of my favourites is Ivan the Terrible and his son Ivan. I pronounced Ivan differently twice then, but you know how he
Ivan.
Ivan, yeah. So it's a Russian painting, and it's I don't know. I think looking at it, I really got to see it. It's like one of Russia's most famous paintings, but when you see it, it's like after the fact of like a father who murdered his son, and it's just the direct aftermath of like him holding his son. But the way that the eyes are painted is just absolutely insane, and it can't help but to be like, oh man, it's so like you can really feel what's happened just through like the eyes. I know that sounds cliche, but if you see it, it's really a case of like, yeah, especially because I think it's a big painting as well. So it'd be one of those things of where you can almost feel the emotion in it of somebody who's just killed their son in a final blow, and he's holding him in his arms, and he's just got this like staring out.
Jeez, I just googled it.
Do you know what I mean? It's just a really powerful kind of like piece of art. And I think it would really like
for
Ivan the Terrible and his son Ivan.
That's horrendous.
Kind of title gore, but
wow.
Hey,
The
it's
sun's eyes are
Ivan and
pretty
Ivan.
bad too.
yeah.
That's not bad and good, but like, oh, that's gutting.
Mm.
Oh.
There you go. And Alistair's looking at it as well.
By
Whoa,
realist
yeah.
artist Ilya Repin, is it?
Those eyes though.
And the second part, which is something I think is impressive, and I always like the look of, is marble sculptures. And I say that specifically, but like one is a statue of Saint Bartholomew, and it's a really cool, really hyper realistic statue of this guy, and you don't realise at first, it looks like he's got a shawl around him, but the actual Satan, he's a martyr. And if you look at the sculptures of him, he's actually, the shawl is his own skin, because he was skinned and beheaded for converting a king, and he's one of the early Christians. But like
macabre, what you were going for, right?
But when you see, you don't notice it. But then you've got ridiculous detail for like the vascular and all the muscles and veins and the bones, and like it's something you don't notice at first. But then you can see like the shawl around him has got his like fingernails on it and stuff like that, which is mad. And to go from, also he's the approved saint of leather makers, which I feel is a bit like a real big joke. You've got skin, so you're saint of leather. But other ones are doing like, you should look for it. There's a sculpture. He does like marble pillows, and they look so comfy, and it's made out of marble, and it's like anything with silk, or what it looks like, like a woman who's got like almost see-through silk, and it looks almost see-through, but it's solid marble, and it's just really like kind of like that. I just think is a ridiculous talent to, one, be able to sculpt full stop, and two, to be able to visually have that representation in your head and know exactly how to get that idea in your head onto stone. And if you make any mistake,
it's like
that's it, isn't it?
That's the one that I looked up for that was Michelangelo's David. I don't know if you guys saw that at all, but it's and there's a thing about Michelangelo being like, oh yeah, I haven't seen it in real life. But yeah, he was talking about how Michelangelo, most sculptors would obviously take the block and then sculpt it, but he thought he's kind of just releasing this figure from within the marble, like it's already, it's like the idea, because it is already there, obviously, but it's, I don't know,
I like that idea. You're releasing it.
You're releasing it from the marble.
It was like a flawed piece of marble that others didn't want to work on.
Yeah, it was
because
too
had, like,
thin.
cracks
Yeah,
and
that's right. Yeah.
crap in it, and he just managed
Like,
to get that.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, so there's
Like the pose, I think, was deliberately chosen because he had to be at this angle, because the marble was so thin that he was actually sculpting with it. I don't know.
Yeah. Other things I do like abstract art and kind of more like colours. I mean, it could be really simple, the idea of you surely just splashing paint on paper, but just the way that it's done, I think you just like it visually. So that's usually the kind of stuff I like. I have other things which go with the definition, and that's the different art forms. And of the 7 main ones, I think. Other ones, it says there's 8, and that goes into different types which can they overlap. One was like 24 different forms, of that as a mix of different stuff. So the 7 one I found, I feel is like a good amount. It's painting, architecture, which you forget about, totally, architecture, sculpture, literature, music, performing, which I assume is like theatre and dance, and cinema. I like that. So I think that, like quite all-encompassing, unless you think that's missing anything.
Well, Freddie, any thoughts on what is and isn't art?
Wow, which obviously overlap, like you said, right?
No, those ones don't overlap.
How does performance not overlap with cinema?
I guess so, because the cinema, I think, is from the directing point of view. Because you could say the performances, that was different, which were in cinema, but the actual cinema, like cinematography, I guess you could say that's more into photography, though. Wait, cinema is... that includes photography. Yeah, see, cinema's photography as well, then.
Cinematography.
Yeah, so I think that I would say that's the difference of someone's doing a performance like acting, but the cinema is a completely different style, isn't it? And same with photography, because you're capturing the scene and like the art that goes with it.
I guess so. I guess it depends where you like draw the line, and it all blurs. I mean, architecture and sculpture, I'm sure architecture is the design, whereas a sculpture could be the way that bits are made, but to a layman, you wouldn't know, right?
Yeah.
For some parts, obviously you would for some stuff. Well, so to tie it to what I was looking at, which is what's not art. Again, this is opinion, and people form their own opinions, and there's always holes you can pick in everything. But this person I was reading was saying that for them, things that are not art are basically things that are too specific. Like the idea of art is communication, right? You're communicating something. And so in that sense, like language is art. But the fact that if it's really specific, like I tell you, get me a banana, or I play a prank on you to make you feel shock, it's not art because it's just a very simple form. You're just evoking one very simple feeling in a very direct and obvious way. There are ways that you can twist it and make it art, or someone can decide that they see something more than others, and so maybe for them it's art. But I think this person was arguing that like emotional response isn't directly art. It's that if it's got layers to it, if it's not too simple, if there's potentially symbolism or different intention in it, then it makes it art. So like a director who makes a really nice film, for them it's probably art, like the way that they put things in the details. But for an average viewer who's just watching it, it might not just be art. It's for them, they're just passing the time. They're not necessarily being evoked with extreme responses.
But is it a hobby though?
Yeah, exactly.
Asking
So
the big questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so I was thinking that in that sense, like all of those 7 types of art that you were saying, like each of them, there are going to be examples where someone makes something, and for them it's like evocative and has meaning, and for someone who looks at it, it's like, yeah, it was just a house in it. It's an alright film, action film on it. It's like, no, you didn't get it. It's like, well, for one it's art, and for someone else it's not. So I think, I don't know if that.
Yeah. No, there's a lot to be said for that. The reaction that it elicits is the key. Really, that's what elevates it to that next level, right? Or to the level of art. Basically.
The thing that I really enjoyed about this explanation, just to finish off, is because I lived, as Jonny knows, with 8 artists, as in people studying different forms of art. We're talking architecture, fine art, textiles, fashion, all of, like, a whole range, illustration. And sometimes something that they'd do, I'd feel, was just for the shock value. You know, they're just doing it to shock or like engage you, I guess.
Painting someone who just killed their son. Just a shock, mate.
No, but
poor guy wearing his own skin.
Can you hold that right there? I'm just gonna get my easel. You stay there. I'll be right back.
Well, I don't know. Like, I'm not trying to put down, like, they made a lot of fantastic stuff, but sometimes I'm just thinking, are you just doing that because you just want a reaction? And then this does happen, right? There are people who, they, like, some guy tried to do a performance piece in London, I heard, where it was him losing his own virginity. Well, obviously losing his own virginity, I guess, but, you know.
And he just couldn't find anyone to do it with, so it didn't ever work.
The bloke standing there with a sign waiting, or like.
So I wonder if it's you're just trying to get maybe an ego boost because you're trying to be weird, or if it is actually art to you, but to others it's just simple shock or simple then to those people it's not art, even if it is to you, which kind of I like.
I mean, I do think the losing virginity thing would be, I don't know whether art, but like a really like an interesting scene to see, because it's, I guess probably the reason why he's doing it is because it's super personal, it's really intense, and that thing that you don't really see more than likely other than just between 2 people, and like what is a completely like whatever moment. But then how, as an artist, because in the same way that anyone will be overthinking and like thinking about what they're doing, do you make that sincere and natural to while you have viewers? You could say you could have it filmed with that and you forget about it, but if you did it on display, then are you really losing your virginity? Are you actually performing a piece which happens to coincide with that? Do you know what I mean? So I think, yeah, I mean, in a way that you'd take away, it would be completely immoral. Would art be something of where you're doing it without somebody knowing, and then you're seeing like a serene, beautiful moment? If you know what I mean.
I like that. Was your losing virginity a serene and beautiful moment?
Yeah, no.
Was an awkward.
The man loses virginity in the woods and no one's there to see it. Did he really lose his virginity? That's the
to the tree.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the thing of like, yeah, it's not serene or whatever, but do you know what I mean? Of like that thing of where it's like, well, the first time I was Ezra like cried a tear was really cool, because it's like, that's a first, that will never happen again. Do you know that thought of like, beforehand they just cry and nothing comes out of their eyes, but then suddenly me and Abby were both there to experience that absolute first, and it was like, this has never happened before. And I think that's really cool, that kind of, and I can see why somebody want to capture that moment effectively.
Did you collect the tears
Did you get
in a
a
little jar?
I did.
Did you?
Did you
No,
actually?
I did put my fingers like, I'm going to taste baby tears. The first ever.
You have plenty more to taste. Why'd you have to drink the first one? Keep it in a little jar.
Well, but now it's in me, imbued, imbibed.
Maybe stronger.
So I converted
So what
my
now have
baby
baby
tears.
strength.
What diet routine do you do? Oh, you didn't mention last week in the diets episode, but the diet's all about your baby tears diet, Jonny.
The problem is, it's quite inhumane to get just baby tears.
At what age do they stop being babies so you can't collect their tears anymore? 5?
Monsters Inc. level ideas. It's children's screams, man. Yeah. Yeah. No, sorry. Go on.
One thing I find of I learned about BP and BC. So BC being before Christ, and then BP being either before physics or before present. So
Before
the first,
physics.
well, yeah. So it's either or, and the reason why. So
Before
hear
the
me out.
discovery or before?
You'll see.
So?
So I looked at what's the earliest painting, what the first instance of art, and it said 30,000 BP. I was like, what's BP? And it said it was some animal carved into a flat piece of stone. And they found it in some caves, I think. But BP, what it means is it's 1950s, effectively when we discovered radiation. From there on out, we can't carbon date anything. It all just it doesn't work because we've got too
yes,
much
that's
radiation.
true.
So usually we do it based on half-lives of something like that. I can't remember. Effectively using radiation, but in the 1950s, which we call either present or before physics, that's when we scupper everything. So before that point, you could either say it's 30,000 years BP or probably like 28,000 years BC.
Can I potentially repeat a fact? I can't remember if I've actually said this on the podcast or not already. So, ever since we started doing radioactive testing, with like bombs and crap and Chernobyl, and it's messed up the whole of kind of the surface of the Earth by putting a load of radioactive material in it. It's because we need to have incredibly pure metal to use in some of our like ridiculously high-end physics equipment in like the Large Hadron Collider and stuff. The metal we use is from sunken Roman ships because they're at the bottom of the sea, so they weren't affected by the radiation of things like Chernobyl.
Really?
Oh
I didn't
wow,
know
Isn't
that.
that-
I'm
isn't
sure you
that
haven't said
wild?
that. That's mad.
that's really
So
cool.
we have to collect sunken ships from the Roman times and use that like metal because it's not.
Because you can't
being
like
affected.
de-radioactive. You can't like
Yeah.
take it out.
Like, have you seen like the satellites which are in space, and like when you look at like active satellites, oh man, that's so many surrounding the Earth. Inactive satellites, well, more or less is a blanket across the Earth of just metal flying through space, and it is the real worry of we need to stop sending stuff up there, otherwise we won't be able to break through. Other thing for the previous episode about Fermi paradox, could it be that civilizations end up just shelving, like hammering themselves inside with the satellites? They're like, oh, we can't explore space anymore because we're stuck.
We can't
Anyway.
see
It's
light
possible.
anymore. Yeah,
Because that stuff gets like if you explode it, then like it starts shattering out and damaging stuff. Okay, wait, we're getting off the track of art.
Yeah.
What else?
I'll,
What else did you guys research this week? Actually,
The one thing was I chatted a little about it before because I've seen like different things about like the how art is high end art is used for like tax evasion and stuff like that. And I tried looking up some stuff is like expense of where you could put it as like if you've got an office you could probably just buy loads of art for that office and then have it as a business expense. But I don't know to what level that really works. Other ones of where you'll have like onshore and offshore.
There's a Van Gogh beside the beside the printer, and there's an original Monet just behind the coffee machine.
And then
there was from the Orangery, like this massive, like like 25 meter long. Yeah.
the Last Supper, like
Is that the last supper? It's like,
in the canteen. Well, I thought it was
tax.
quite. Other ones are where you have onshore and offshore companies of where you buy and sell to yourself effectively and you avoid the tax. And then other things could be if you have a big art collection and you're like, say if, I don't know if it's just America it works, but say if you were like had, what they'll do to increase the value of stuff is say you've got a load of artwork from a certain type of artist, you get the most expensive one and you sell it. And so how art is usually valued will be based on similar art from the artist and what was most recently sold. So you could even sell it to a mate for like 5 million or like 30 million, some stupid. And you've got loads of other artwork by that same person. And then so suddenly someone's like, that artwork recently sold for like 50 million. That means all the other artwork should be a similar amount. Just also that's how houses work usually, of like how they value. You look at similar properties in an area. And so what they can then do is then they can donate all the rest of it to museums, and that is counted as a charitable donation, and then that comes off your tax. So some may be like, you've got 30 million in tax to pay, I'm going to make a donation to a museum of $30 million worth of art, and that will literally just wipe out that bill. Other ones, again, you can launder money through it because I watched the thing of Adam Ruins Everything as to help, because I was looking through different things and someone suggested it, and I was like, it's actually quite good. And the thing of like, it's really hard to get into the art world because, do you know, like with art, Freddie, you'll probably know as well, for like people just, you're made to do of just sell your art really. So, like, here's your art. Yeah, that's cool. But that's only like 50% of your mark. The rest is you just fannying around, explaining why it's good. And I think the way to put it is, it's like singing. Loads of people can sing. You can see on like the online, people have incredible voices, but they never get anywhere because, like with art, a lot of people can do art, but X factor is what sells. You know, like it's when you get to that point of how to sell your voice. Not about having a good voice. It's about selling it. And same with art. It's not just about having good art, but selling it. Even to a point of like, apparently there's a gallery which was heard saying of like the art you'll find even in the street, it will be like worth nothing compared to one in the gallery. But you can bet the actual skill probably isn't too dissimilar, depending on the artist. And so it's really about the value given. And it is a bit of like a buddy club of where sometimes it's like only certain artists get popular because they're in the right groups or crowds, stuff like that. Apparently even like galleries will... Daniel Radcliffe tried buying some art and they didn't sell it to him because they were looking for a higher class type of person. So they want to sell within the art community rather than just to random people, because then it gives the gallery more value.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. And then Tenet, if you've watched that, there's a bit about that of where in airports they'll have like little rooms because it's like duty free, so you don't pay like the tax or something, where you'll hold art in certain places for like a year, and then when you bring it out the tax is different. I don't know, but there's loads of like dodgy stuff with art, and how art gets its value is a bit dodgy, like high end art. Other than like the classics, it's weird, and like there's a lot of like dodginess with actual art. So yeah,
that's interesting. The only other thing I know about if you're trying to make money with art is commissions. You go to like a hotel and they're like, we need some art to go on our walls, and you're like, cool, I'll do that for you, and you do it and you get paid. It's not like fancy and it's not high end, you're not going to make it a lot of money, but you get paid for doing like a job. So like a friend of mine is traveling around South America, it sounds so sick, and going to hostels and painting their walls, like, you know, like hostelry. You know, you have like
murals,
cool flowers and yeah, exactly that. And
Sick.
she gets paid like some money, and then she like gets to stay there for free, and then she moves on to the next one, and she does different style and experiments, and it just looks like a sick life.
Wow. Like one thing of it's a really famous. It's like the most expensive hotel in the world in Las Vegas. It's like $1.5 billion to make. And you go into the lobby, and like the ceiling, instead of a chandelier, has this huge glass blown flowers which cost $10 million. You can bet that did not cost $10 million for the artists, or for the glass blowers, or for the materials, but because it's a $1.5 billion hotel, you can bet they were like, we're going to put a bit of extra change on it to make sure that this is, you're selling value, aren't you? There's a point of where there's that cut off. There's a cut off of where it's like, actually, this is what it costs for the work. This is what we pay our artists. This is what you do this. But because this is such a like weddings or disability stuff of where they put on an amount because it means more. So it makes you believe that it's more valuable.
Also, one thing I was going to say, it's definitely art-wise, and it's also quite funny because I saw it recently. You reminded me with the Last Supper thing. It was like they just walk into a place and they're like, "Hi, table for 26, please." And the waitress is like, "Sorry, there's 13 of you." He goes, "Now we're all going to sit on the same side of the table." He was like, "I never thought that, but that's actually quite funny." Yeah,
I like that.
that tickled me, but yeah, no.
That brings me on excellently, if we have time,
We do.
to controversial works of art.
There you go. What a
So-
segue.
I'm just going to blast through them just because they're interesting and I thought people might like them. So one of them, to do with the Last Supper, is called the Yo Mama's Last Supper by Renee Cox. And it was a controversial piece because it depicts her naked in the middle as Jesus, and then all of the apostles are African American except for Judas, who is white, and it's to symbolize difficulties of African Americans in American culture right now. Then we have La Nona Ora by Mauricio Catalan. It's a life-size Pope who's been crushed by a meteor surrounded by glass, and it's like literally like it looks like the Pope's just like looks like an act of God as the meteor has come down and crushed the Pope. And while it was on display, a lot of people tried to like get the rock off him, but it's like it's a boulder, it's massive, and they were trying to get it off and be like, save the Pope. Then we have like people like Damien Hirst, who in 1991 put a shark in 4,360 gallons of formaldehyde and presented it. It looks pretty cool. I don't know how I feel about it, but it's cool.
It's very cool.
We have Andreas Serrano's Piss Christ, which is Jesus on a cross in a jar of his own urine. That actually wasn't controversial for a long time until it was at some exhibition somewhere and some people weren't happy about it. So I'm not sure if they tried to
Is
open
it
it or
called
not.
Piss Christ? Sorry. That was
Yes.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things. Is
Um,
like, right, it's not really getting enough reaction. Let's take it to the Vatican or something like that. We'll wait until it gets a reaction.
No one's been annoyed about my jar of my Christmas with my jar of piss. The reason I did it was to get the shock values. Yeah, if I can put it in the Vatican, that will help out my cause.
It's not shocking. It's not art. It's not shocking. I need to keep going.
This is in 1987. It went to several art shows and no one cared until like finally someone
I
did.
thought of taking a jar of my own shit, but then you can't see the things.
It's too dark in there. One I particularly liked is this 120 foot long, 12 foot high steel curved wall that was placed in the middle of New York Federal Plaza. And so this massive long wall that was deliberately made to be an obstruction. Does that make sense? So people had to go around it to get where they wanted to go. And the idea was that it like makes people think for a second about, like be aware of their surroundings. Anyway, that artist went to court. People were so annoyed about having to walk around his structure.
That's hilarious.
Then
Being caught in foot traffic. It's like, I've had to queue to get to work.
Yeah, literally. His name is Richard Serra. It's called the Tilted Arc in 1986. We have then Marcel Duchamp's fountain, which is a urinal that was placed on its side. Kind of the irony was it was thrown away one day and they had to go and get another one, but the make of urinal didn't exist anymore, so they had to make it from scratch.
I love the idea. It was like, surely the make didn't matter. It was the idea, isn't it? It's not like it had any intrinsic value, the make. You could use armored shanks. It would have been fine.
Exactly. Speaking of it's the idea, David de Tuna put a banana on a wall with some gaffer tape, and it sold for $120,000. And some other artist came along and took the banana off the wall and ate it as a performance piece. But then people actually then said, oh no, it's not the banana, it's the concept, and that's what sells. And so the original artist guy, David de Tuna, wasn't annoyed about it, which I kind of thought was cool, I guess.
Have you seen the Banksy of what he did in that art?
He's like, I still made 120 grand from sellotape and banana to wall, so you know what? I'm pretty cool about it.
Do what you want, man. Have you seen the Banksy one of where he did it and then it went through the shredder and well, surely you just made that so much more valuable by shredding that. You've ruined it. Oh wait, no, it's more art. Oh man, it just doubled.
It's like it sells and then he shreds it and then the shredder starts shredding and oh no, the shredder broke halfway, so it's only half shredded. And it's like,
it looks even more artistically,
that's got to be part of it.
Surely.
Yeah. Last one that I just wanted to mention was Caravaggio's Death of a Virgin, which is in 1605. He painted a very realistic rendition of the Virgin Mary dead, not in an attractive manner, legs hanging off, bloated body, and you can imagine that in 1605 people weren't happy.
So there's also a thing for Rage Against the Machine. I'm trying to find out if it's actually real or not because it just reminded me, and it may be a thing of like maybe of they were set to perform outside the stock exchange, Rage Against the Machine, and like apparently they bust in a bit and then they closed it down for like a couple of minutes or something like that. Which again, if that actually happened, they would have lost so much money if you closed down even for a couple of minutes. But yeah, so that could be a thing. And obviously art with Rage Against the Machine is just great. It's just really angry and poignant and it's just great. And either way, that's definitely like fierce art because not only is it kind of music, poetry and like politically poignant, and philosophical. So yeah, Rage Against the Machine. That's a good.
That's a lot of P's you just used there in a sentence.
Page your pants the machine.
Philosophical. Yeah. But anyway, any final thoughts you guys have for the art and art?
That was a really small topic. Thanks for that.
Nice and specific. Yeah. Next week we'll do the incisor tooth at Freddie's request.
Yes.
Next, the one thing is, do you think landscape photography is as much art as say is like
portrait photography?
Do you like when someone's making like art? I want to say more artistic photography, where it's a bit more like a random scene, but the idea is to evoke emotion compared to just a pretty landscape. Because I sometimes feel landscape photography is more like documentation rather than the same with like if you looked at old school scientists, they would draw flowers not because it was meant to be express emotion, more so it's just documenting with the only tools available.
Well, yeah, that's what ties into the not art, right? It's not. It's
who's it intended for, and how's it going to be received? Yeah,
it's evoking a simple this is what this is. But to someone, they're like, oh, this was a drawing that my dad did when he was he was a scientist who was looking at lilies. This means a lot to me because I see the way he draws in his art. So I guess it's purpose in it.
For sure. But yeah. There, guys. Yeah. I think that's a nice little place to end. So yeah, thank you very much for listening to this week's episode, and we will see you. This has been No Idea Yet, and we will see you next time. Thank you, as always, very much for listening to this week's episode of No Idea Yet. If you have any thoughts or interest in the podcast, you can check us out on our Instagram page at No Idea Yet Podcast, or you can email us if you've got any ideas for us or anything you'd like to let us know. That is noideayetpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you very much, and we will see you soon.